This is issue 93 of Totally Dope. I'm Jeffrey Cann. And in this issue, your PLCs are in Iran's cyber crosshairs. The gas industry is moving demand to match the supply. Camera technology is a true game changer. And finally, oil refineries are suddenly a huge energy security risk. Here's my digital tip for the week. Dispatch your combined IT/OT cybersecurity team to take a close look at your PLCs. Following on from last week's story about an AI agent from OpenAI going on a crime spree, I received an alert this week from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, that Iranian-affiliated cyber actors were hard at work targeting programmable logic controllers, or PLCs. This is taking place in the energy industry among many other sectors, particularly in the US, and there's been a step up in activity since the start of hostilities in the Middle East. The hackers break in through an internet connection to the PLC, steal its project files, turn off some good code, add some malicious code, which in turn then silences alarms, disables shutdown instructions, and manipulates the operator displays on SCADA systems. Now, for the operator, it means the system is going haywire. But the screen says, everything's fine, nothing to see here. PLCs are widely used to do things like open and close valves, stopping your pumps, cycling your compressors, and managing chemical injections into wells and other facilities. The PLCs themselves are from really big brands, such as Unitronics, Rockwell Automation, Group Schneider, and Siemens. These latest incursions point to the use of human cyber professionals. But I think it's only a matter of time before the Iranians start using open source AI agents to do their work. Try to imagine a single cyber hacker mobilizing hundreds of nasty AI agents. The level of havoc will ramp up quickly. You don't want to be caught out on this one. Here's my observation for this week. The logic of gas pipelines has been consistent for decades, but it's starting to change. For my entire professional career, the role of a natural gas pipeline has been to move the gas from its point of supply, sometimes over quite vast distances, to its point of consumption, which is typically a human settlement of some kind, like a city or a town. From there, the gas flows into homes and businesses or industry, or what Asians call city gas. Other consumption points, of course, might be liquefied natural gas plants that chill the gas into a liquid state for shipping in between continents. A new and very different model is now starting to emerge. Instead of moving gas to a demand center, the AI industry is instead building power generation assets and these big data centers close to the gas field. It's far cheaper to move the results of your Google search in the form of tokens over a telecommunications cable or a satellite link to your device, which, might not even be stationary, than it is to move billions of gas molecules to a power plant that is actually located close to or in your city, or even as city gas supply. You'll spend years in regulatory cycles just getting permission to build a pipeline. The big risk, however, is that in our capitalist system, the economics end up favoring combined gas and production with these power plants, power generation, and an attached AI data center. Companies in the gas business may simply stop building pipelines to deliver molecules to city gas infrastructure. And that would be a huge problem, because clearly we're going to need both. Here's my personal note for the week. Everyone is carrying around the ability to generate evidence. I was cycling last week on Sandpiper Road, a lovely straight stretch of suburban tarmac nearby that descends about 100 meters elevation over 700 meters of run. Put another way, I can just about get my road bike to roll at the posted speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour as I head downhill. Now, I try to be as visible as possible to the occasional car. I ride only in daylight. I usually stick to good weather. I use both front and rear lights. I have high-vis clothing and lots of reflectors. On Sandpiper, I often move closer to the center of the lane. This is to keep cars from passing, as I'm going pretty much at the speed limit, and to give me as much reaction time as possible should someone pull out of a driveway or an intersection. This clearly bothers some people. On one particular ride, the driver pulled in front of me while I was rocketing downhill, put on the brakes like he was about to turn, which is fair enough. But then he grabbed his cell phone and started taking pictures or video of me through his rear view window before he then sped off into the distance. I have no idea why, as I wasn't breaking any rules, but he was. Just touching a cell phone as a driver here in British Columbia is illegal. So, I've just bought an inexpensive front-facing camera for my bike that's going to record my rides. With cameras so cheap now, you really need to assume that you're being recorded no matter what you're doing. And in my case, should I ever find myself in a dispute with a car, I'll at least have a dash cam video recording that'll back up my claim. For industry, cameras can now go virtually everywhere and record virtually everything. And finally, here's my energy insight. Oil refineries have suddenly emerged as the key energy security risk, and not crude supply. With very few exceptions, the only machines that can actually consume crude oil are oil refineries. There are about 700 or so worldwide. They're generally tuned to consume specific crude types, and refining capacity is in perilously short supply. It's not well appreciated, but we are in a long-term systemic capacity reduction for refineries. Industry has been shutting down its smallest and its least efficient refineries as the cost to retrofit those refineries to satisfy pollution regulations cannot be recouped over the life of the refinery plant. Only a few nations, such as India, are even building new refineries. And it was the closure of the Strait of Hormuz that highlighted this refining vulnerability. You can see it in crude pricing, which has been oddly stable compared to the price of refined products like diesel and jet fuel. And then 3 of the biggest exporters of finished products withdrew capacity from the market, albeit for very different reasons. China has halted all exports of finished products so as to ensure that it has enough of its own fuels for its domestic use. Several of the big Middle East refining complexes have been repeatedly bombed by Iran, taking many of them offline for very lengthy repairs. And Russia has found itself on the receiving end of Ukraine's steadily improving long-range missiles, which have been hitting its extensive Soviet-era refining facilities, which are very, very old and very expensive to repair under the current sanctions regimes. Double taps, which is hitting a refinery after repairs have even begun, is proving to be particularly effective. The consequence is that nations are now reconsidering their risk exposure to the refining sector. This is prompting some rather interesting moves. This week, Australia revealed that it is launching a study into building a new domestic refinery after spending years shutting down its old, smaller facilities. There was even a story about a company studying turning on Venezuela's old and neglected sector in refining and just how hard that's going to be, given its age. There's never been a better time now than to be in oil refining. I bet the next several years will focus on improving the resilience and capacity of the global refining sector. Until next week.